Welcome everybody. My name's David. It's such an honor that anyone came to, that anyone reads our emails. It's really like such a cool thing for me to be a part of. So thank you guys so much for coming. Today I'm joined by my good friend, Justin Roethlingshoefer. Justin and I, he's a hard last name. It's pronounced Roethlingshoefer. Justin and I go back. He used to work in the NHL, and I'm a hockey player and in that hockey strength conditioning world. And so him and I connected through that. And if you guys have been reading along, he's been written like 3 articles now for our site. And he's really an expert on, I think of Roethlisberger. Someone said I think of Ben Roethlisberger every time I look at the name. He just wanted to come on and talk about sleep and performance. And I think his realm of expertise, which he'll speak to, is how to take like all the data and metrics, which can be really confusing and like a lot of strength conditioning people get really tied up on, and how like that actually can be useful to just someone who wants to just like be healthier. That's my introduction for Justin. From here, I'll kind of let him take it away. We'll probably go for like 10, 15 minutes, and then any questions I think both of us can stay on. So without further ado, here's my friend Justin.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that, my man. And guys, today, this isn't going to be the last one David and I do. So we really want to just dive in here and give an overarching view, because the concept of sleep has been so misunderstood. And it's been so confusing, from the way in which, hey, do we need 7 hours of sleep? Do we need 9 hours of sleep? Do we need 10 hours of sleep? Do I do this routine before I go to bed? Do I do that routine before I go to bed? But in actuality, it all comes back to it, and they're all tools. Meditation is a tool. Certain things we can use on our bed, different pillows, blackout shades, intermittent fasting, keto, paleo, sauna, steam room, inversion mats. They're all tools. But what we start to understand is that not all tools work for all of us, and not all at the same time. And so we need to identify what tools will work for us. And it comes down to the sound foundational aspects of what sleep truly is. And so I'm going to share my screen here and kind of do some drawings for you guys, because I love to draw. And so no matter who you are, and I know I've talked about this if you read some of the articles that have come out, but no matter who you are, we all sleep in 90-minute cycles. So again, that cycle that you're going to go through will be 4 stages long. And those stages consist of, let's put this down here, right there, of light sleep, slow wave sleep, REM sleep, and then that last is a little wake cycle. And that doesn't mean that we're conscious. It doesn't mean we're up walking around. It just means that maybe we're rolling over, or that our brain waves have gone from the highest resonating in our sleep pattern, which is delta, back down to maybe that alpha or beta stage. And so in understanding that, we can now optimize the way in which we get into these cycles, because a good sleeper versus a bad sleeper, the only difference is how long it takes you to get from light sleep into that slow wave sleep, into that REM sleep, and how long you stay in that REM before you enter into that little wake cycle. Now, ideally, within these 4 stages, we have in any given night, less than 50% of our time in light sleep, somewhere between 20 and 25% spent in that slow wave sleep. Again, 20 to 25% spent in that REM sleep, and less than 5% spent in this wake cycle. So if you use an Oura Ring, if you use an Apple Watch, if you use a Fitbit, if you use any of these aspects, any of these tools, you're going to see a whole bunch of numbers. You're going to see readiness scores. You're going to see resting heart rates, max heart rates, strain scores, recovery scores. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And the key to it is looking at these 2 numbers right here. How much slow wave sleep are you getting, and how much REM sleep are you getting? Because again, if I was to draw this out and look at a typical person that I see on a typical basis, is most people are getting about 75 to 80% of their sleep in that light sleep area. I would say probably of the 10,000 people that I've worked with over the last 3 years, that the average number I see here is about 75%. And by just changing one thing, and we're going to get to that thing, but by just changing one thing, we ultimately allow you to get into that slow wave and REM sleep faster, which ultimately gets into the way in which we show up. And that one thing is this. When we take a look at how we sleep, we need to sleep on average, we call them 90-minute cycles because we know this is how long an average cycle is. We need 35 cycles per week. If we divide that out by 7, that means we need 5 cycles per night. And if we know our cycles are 90 minutes long, that means that we need 7.5 hours of sleep per night on average. Now, by just simply understanding this, we can change the way in which we plan our sleep. And I know everyone's like, well, what do you mean by that, Justin? Well, all of a sudden, if we know what time we need to wake up, our wake time is usually set, right? And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Say I needed to be up at 6:30 a.m. every morning. And I need to go, okay, how can I wake up optimally out of one of these cycles throughout my entire night? We now count backwards and we count by cycles and we plan the time in which we go to bed. So if we go here, 6:30, we now count back 5 cycles, which is 7.5 hours. That means that we need to be in bed sleeping no later, and this is sleeping no later than 11 p.m. What that means is this is sleeping now. What happens now is we get to institute what I love to call the 3-2-1 rule. And what this 3-2-1 rule means is this: 3 hours before bed, no major meals or workouts. 2 hours before bed, no more work. And 1 hour before bed, no blue light. And I'll go through the science with this in a second. But no major meals or workouts is because our body consists of 2 nervous systems. And I know we've talked about this as well. And I'll get out of the sciencey stuff in a second, I promise. But we live on 2 nervous systems, 2 ends of the spectrum. On this end, we have the parasympathetic. On this end of the spectrum, we have the sympathetic. And when I talk about these, think about parasympathetic as rest and digest. And think about this side as fight, flight, or stress. In order to optimize this, and this isn't you're at one or the other, it's a spectrum. We go back and forth. The way in which we optimize this and get into a deeper state of sleep faster, we know that our first stage of sleep, between that first 90 minutes, so midnight to 12:30, is our deepest level of slow wave sleep. That's what science tells us. The deepest level of slow wave sleep will happen between that 11 and 12:30 cycle, that very first cycle. So we need to make sure that when we're going to bed, we're optimizing ourselves and putting ourselves into this parasympathetic state as quickly as possible. And so that 3-2-1 rule is going to allow us to do that. So 3 hours before bed, no major meals or workouts. Meals activate that sympathetic system in our body because now our body has to digest something. A workout raises our body temperature, which when we're sleeping, our body temperature drops. So our body has to work harder to get our body temperature to drop. When we're working out, we are activating that sympathetic nervous system. And so by avoiding these 3 hours before bedtime, it's going to allow us to get into those stages of sleep faster. So that's number 1. So now if we suddenly know this, we can now plan for this. Okay, great. 3 hours before bed, I need to be sleeping. That means that at 8 p.m., I can no longer do any type of workout or any major meal. No more work. Work puts us into that state of sympathetic nature, whether that's answering emails, whether that's doing conference calls, whether that's getting on phone with somebody, whether that's reading something for school, whatever it may be. Why does that put us there? Because our body does not know the difference between physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional stress. It only has one stress response. And by understanding that, we can now put a hard line in the sand, say, I'm choosing quality sleep so that I can ultimately push harder the next day. So when we know that, we now come here and go, okay, perfect. At 9 p.m., I'm going to now do no more work. You watch a movie on TV, you watch a show, maybe you're relaxing, whatever it may be. Boom, at 10 p.m., no more blue light. That means no more screen time, no more phones, no more TVs, no more anything like that. The one caveat is if we throw on blue light blockers. That's going to help limit that. They did a study at the University of Tennessee that showed people who take in blue light 1 to 3 hours before bedtime, it actually decreases the melatonin production by 30 minutes. So when we're going to bed at 11 o'clock, we want our melatonin production to be the highest that it can be so that we can get into those deep, full states of sleep faster. So if we're emitting ourselves to blue light 1 hour before bed, that means that we are going to have 30 to 60 minutes of decreased melatonin production. That means up until midnight. Thus, we're missing out our key window of REM sleep. This is why 90%, or the majority of people, are at about 75% of light sleep. So just by simply looking at this and working off of this clock backwards, we can now set ourselves up so that we can get the most optimal sleep into this level of precision much, much faster. And if we're sleeping better, we're going to be more immune, we're going to be more energized, we're going to be ready to go. Now, in between this 10 and 11 o'clock, that's where we want to tap into those parasympathetic activating activities. Things such as maybe meditation, reading, journaling, stretching, yoga, sex, some type of water item. It can be a hot tub, it can be a cold tub, it can be a contrast shower, it can be, you name it. There's a million of tools out there, but we need to find out what tool is right for you. And once we identify this, that's when we can start to implement this and make it truly for you. And all that we need to do now is it's not something that we stress about, because now we go, okay, hey, if I know tonight I can only get to bed at 11:30, then we shift our wake up time to 7. Or if we know that we want to wake up at 8, we repurpose it and say, hey, what time do I need to be sleeping by? And we can start to just manipulate this and shift this by this simple protocol that now will allow you to have a greater night's sleep, more optimal sleep, and help you recover from every workout, every tough day, every mentally draining day, so that you're optimally performing consistently day in and day out. Turn it over to you, David.
Cool. I have one question. Why don't you, I guess you can leave the share on. I know you'd mentioned that because we need 35 cycles per week, does that mean that we don't need to get 5 every night? That means like we could get, like, if we can only get 4 one night, can we like make that up on like a weekend?
Correct. Absolutely. 100%. And so the myth that you can't do that you can't make this up is exactly that. It's a myth. And so if you were to utilize this even throughout the day, and I talk about this in some of my content as well, if you're talking about naps, the ideal nap is either 30 minutes long or 90 minutes long. Because at 30 minutes, we have not yet tapped into that next stage of sleep, which is slow wave or REM. And at 90 minutes, you've now added 1 cycle to your week. And so say, for example, you were to get 4 cycles one night, but then you took a 90-minute nap during the day. There's your 5, done. If you were to get 4 cycles all week long, and you got 8 and 8 on Saturday, Sunday, there's your makeup for the week. You've accumulated sleep debt over the course of the week, but you've filled that cup back up on the course of the weekend. That is why it's so key just to track and take a look at that. AJ, I saw your look there for how I'm seeing slow wave sleep and REM sleep numbers. And I've done a lot of studies, used Oura rings, used Fitbits, used Whoop bands, used Apple watches, used Whoop bands and different types of straps, different types
Brands.
of technology, polars, Garmins, you name it. I'm going to put something in here. This, if you guys take and click on that link right there, that'll actually take you and give you a free Whoop band. So the hardware and technology will be paid for, and then your first month will be covered as well. So if you utilize that, I'm a big fan of Whoop simply because everything has been everything has been utilized very closely with different EMG monitors and ECGs, which is really the gold standard for sleep quality. And so that's why I use them and love them.
I use the Oura Ring because I think it looks cool, but to each
Yeah,
their.
I mean, I've got the Oura Ring as well, Whoop band, straps. I got it. I got everything. I'm just really looking into it. And then what I'm seeing the clients for is I'm seeing them on a holistic basis. So I'm seeing them not only for sleep, I'm helping them with 8 components of their life: training, hydration, sleep, nutrition, stress management, immune function, environment, and mindset. So those 8 pieces are things that we work off of. We go off of, we do DNA and epigenetic testing, we do biomarking, and then we utilize the wearable technology to ultimately optimize their habits in those 8 areas so that it's using the proper tools at the proper time for them that ultimately supercharges them at the end of the day.
Yeah, Justin's pretty much known as like the data guy. Like you have questions about like what to make of your wearable device and like how to make sense of DNA stuff. Like that's pretty much what I know him for and what people in our industry know him for. So cool. Any other questions? Could be, yes.
Go ahead. No, I'm just gonna put a little link in here as well, guys. There's it's
Question
called,
from Salvador. What if I need to pee in the middle of the night? Would that mess up the entire cycle?
awesome, a great question. So the answer is no, because, and the reason that is because our body is signaling us when we are in a deep REM sleep or a slow wave sleep. That time that you have to pee is actually the moment that you enter into that small wake cycle. So you've actually already gone through. So when's the last time, think about this really intently, have some awareness around this. When is the last time that you've gotten up to pee in the middle of the night and have been like, I'm so tired, I can't get up to pee? You've always done it because you've always woken up, you've always gotten up, and you've always gone. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that is what we should be able to do first thing in the morning as well. That's what it feels like to wake up right after a cycle is finished. Because you may have had that urge to pee in a slow wave sleep cycle, but you're so deep in sleep that your body will never wake you up out of it. And you'll very rarely pee the bed unless you're just unconscious. You've had one too many one night and you're just laying there and you pee the bed.
That's a tough look.
It is a tough one, especially if you've got some friends around. But that's the thing, is that will not cause that will never be the case. It will not wake you up out of it. However, this is where you want to make sure your sleep environment is really locked in and tight, that you're not going and exposing yourself to light. You're not having light shine in from the outside. You're not having alarm clocks that have light shining in. You don't have night lights or landing lights, but it's as dark as humanly possible to make sure that that rhythm is not interrupted. We've got a lot of clients that sometimes see that, and that can create issues for them. So that's one thing to think about. Hopefully that answered your question. Next one. Perfect. Awesome, Salvador. Is it best to sleep for 90-minute sleep for increments of 90 minutes? Exactly. Are you better off? Yes. Phenomenal question. Again, I'll address this right here. So it is always best to sleep in these 90-minute cycle increments. Reason being is, as Nika was asking, if you were to all of a sudden sleep for, call it 8 hours. 8 hours would probably be okay because it'd be just like that nap aspect. But the moment you get into 8:15, 8:20, 8:30, Now you're waking up literally in the middle of a slow wave sleep or REM cycle. How many times have you guys woken up early before your alarm and you're like, oh, I'm just going to sleep for another 40 minutes. This is going to be great. You fall asleep, and then all of a sudden you wake up 30, 40 minutes later, and you have an absolutely atrocious sleep hangover. You're like, I wish I would have gotten up 40 minutes ago because I am just absolutely exhausted. I'm in a fog. I can't focus, and I wish I was not there. And that really becomes the key, is identifying and planning that out so that, hey, if you have to get up at 6:30, and to Nico's question, is if you plan to go to bed, if you had to wake up at 6:30, that wasn't a negotiable. Waking up at any later than 6:30 was non-negotiable. And you happen to not be able to go to bed at 11 p.m., like you said, then now the goal is to go to bed somewhere between midnight and 12:30, because that will actually allow you to wake up with a more energetic, more focused time point, but making sure again that you execute the 3-2-1 on that 12-hour point. So it's not at 11 o'clock, now you turn the TV on or you go back and do emails, you go back and work, but now you just extend that last hour. So you go back to your parasympathetic buffet of maybe it's more yoga, maybe it's more breath work, maybe it's more
Read a book.
What's that?
Read a book.
Read a book, journal, whatever it may be that keeps you in that relaxed state, so that you drift off to sleep, and boom, by 11:45, 12 o'clock, 12:15, you're sleeping deeply, so that you can get into that, again, greater level of sleep faster. And when you wake up, you're going to get out of it much quicker as well. Hopefully that helped you there, Nico. Carissa, if you're not able to fully utilize the 3-2-1 system, and is there a bedtime routine that would that you would recommend to kind of wind down, read in bed? Yes. So exactly that kind of buffet I just spoke about, where it's anything that is helping you kind of wind down. So it could be a sauna, a steam room, a hot bath, Epsom salt bath. Something else that a lot of people should all utilize is a magnesium supplement. And I'm not talking about something orally, I'm talking about magnesium spray. And it's called EASE, EASE. And it's a simple spray that's 100% bio-utilization for your body. A lot of sprays, you can only utilize about 20-25% because of the absorption and uptake rate. But the reason that we want to utilize the reason that we want to utilize this and utilize a spray is because it's going to absorb right into the bloodstream immediately. And magnesium is actually used for over 300 processes in the body. So anytime you feel stress, anytime that you have a stressful stimulus come at you, magnesium is being used. So 95% of us are in a magnesium deficit throughout the entire day. And so magnesium is also the number one precursor or cofactor in the conversion of melatonin. And so by being deficient in magnesium, we can obviously see the effect that it's going to have on us from a sleep standpoint. So a magnesium spray with some type of yoga, some type of gratitude journaling, some type of stretching, reading, all amazing things to do so that you can help you wind down before bed. But that wind down period, even if you can't use the 3-2-1 rule, that last hour is key in making sure you're able to wind down appropriately. And then Steve, are the 35 cycles set in stone? For example, athletes who train full time at high level, could they need 9 hours a night? So great question. Again, this is where it really gets into the personalization of it, and where we can start to tap into your DNA and epigenetics. If you are really trying to do a real look at how much sleep you needed and a natural circadian rhythm, what we would end up doing is, and this is what I do with all of my professional athletes, because in the off season they don't have to get up, or my Olympic athletes, even some of my big time CEOs that have kind of a little bit more control of their schedule, is I say, okay, I want you, the moment that you start getting fatigued, you start kind of having that natural come down calming period at night, I want you to answer the bell and I want you to go to sleep. Just start getting ready for bed. If it's at 8:30 or if it's at 11:30. I don't care what time it is. And for 4 days straight, I want us to go to bed when we are tired. I want us to wake up naturally whenever we wake up. What I have seen and what we have found, besides what I have found from the DNA testing, is that 90% of people will wake up on an average of 7.5 to 9 hours. That is what we will find, is that they wake up consistently over those 4 days on their own between 7.5 and 9 hours. I've got some people, all they need, tapped out 4 days in a row, 6.5 hours. That was them. That's what they felt great at. They woke up naturally, and all of a sudden we set them still at the 35 cycles was our goal. But we knew if we were at the bottom end of that and timed out their sleep appropriately, that they were still optimizing themselves from a brain standpoint. And what was really ironic was when we started to do our biomarking on a regular basis, when we moved them from trying to get 8 hours of sleep a night back to their 6 to 7.5 hours of sleep per night on the 35 cycles, their uptake and utilization of vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin A all skyrocketed to where before they were having to over supplement instead of just changing to the amount of sleep that they needed, because our body is one big system. And what happens is our body is going to do whatever it takes to keep us alive. If that means stealing from John to pay Paul because our body is deficient in vitamin D, it's going to find a way to get it in a different way. And a lot of it always depends on sleep. And because once we optimize our sleep, once we find the sleep cycles that work for us, we will then be able to move forward quicker and create greater changes along the way as well. So no, the 35 cycles are not set in stone, but it's quite often that that is a very solid average to go off of, unless we start working and put you in a situation where we can start finding what works really well for you. I've got some athletes that are at that 42 cycles, but on average, it's somewhere in that 35 range. Absolutely, Steve.
Cool. I'm gonna ask one more. Oh, sorry, if someone else wants to speak, just go ahead. Okay, I'm just curious what you did with, like, especially when you were working the NHL with guys who had night games, obviously, what you would do to like encourage them for their like pre-bed routine, like after a game. So let's say like the game ends at 9 p.m. You got to eat, go back to a hotel. Like, what does that routine look like? And like,
Awesome.
I think this applies for people like if you just have to train at night, just because like that's what works for your schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put into the chat here, there's a link. It's called masterinSixminutes.com. It's basically got a big PDF as well as a couple video sequences that will really guide you through all of this that I just spoke about here, and those 8 parameters, so that you can really start to dive deeper into this stuff and utilize it on a really effective basis. So I put that up in there. But to answer your question, David, a lot of times people don't have the option to not work out at night, not train at night. But what you do have the option to do, and what is in your control, is these last 2 items. Okay? No more work, no more blue light. And when I say work, I'm talking about things that put us into that sympathetic state. So we do have this control. Okay, even say the guys that we play at 7, you end the game at 10. You have a night workout because that's what you're working till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. You went worked out just to make sure you got it in. But now what you're able to do is make sure that the meal you're having, if you're eating protein or you're taking protein in, make sure it's in a liquid form. Make sure it's not something that your body has to digest heavily. Put a solid shake together, berries, kale, spinach, collagen, wheys, protein powders, all into a massive shake at night, because your body is going to be able to metabolize that a lot easier and keep you in this sympathetic state. As soon as for these guys, as soon as they were done the game, we put them into a parasympathetic state immediately. How? Breath work, and we can do a session on breath work. Some type of hot cold immersion, some type of meditation with the breath work, and then a little stretch routine. Now, does that mean that's what's going to work for everybody? No. It's a simple part of the tools that we chose to utilize that work for certain guys. There might be things that will work for you. Maybe it is, again, maybe it's reading, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's a gratitude journal, maybe it's going for a walk. All of these things will allow you to tap into another level of parasympathetic nervous system, which helps that wind down process. But not having blue light and not having work or sympathetic stimulating items at night, especially within that last hour to 2 hours, is amazingly going to change the way in which you show up and the way in which you sleep and the quality of sleep, especially within that first cycle, which we know is where you get into your deepest level of slow wave sleep, which is also the cycle in which the greatest level of HGH is released. So when we're all worried about our gains, when we're all worried about putting on mass or keeping our lean mass high, it comes down to getting the quality sleep in through this first phase. The other aspect that's really unique here, when we're talking about fat loss, we're talking about weight loss. Study was done at the University of Pennsylvania. And another one, I'll talk to you about the other one at NYU here in a second, but the one in University of Pennsylvania, they took two groups of people. One that only was sleep deprived, 5.5 hours of sleep or less, and the other that had 7.5 hours of sleep. They had the exact same exercise regimen. They had the exact same calorie intake based upon their height, weight, and BMI. They had the exact same stress components throughout the day. The one that was sleep deprived versus the one that was not sleep deprived lost the not sleep deprived lost 7 pounds more over a 7-week period than the not sleep deprived. The only difference was sleep deprivation and the quality of sleep in which they were getting. The second study that was done at NYU took two groups of people and they did the exact same thing. They fed them the same thing. They all exercised the same. Everything was the same. Broke it into 2 phases. First phase, as much sleep as they wanted. Second phase, which was weeks 8 through 16, which in a weight loss program, these were all weight loss people. In a weight loss program, when do you typically lose the most weight? First 8 weeks, right? When they took a look at that, the first 8 weeks versus the second 8 weeks, they lost 57% more body fat than in the first 8 weeks, simply due to sleep. And so that is the impact and power that this sleep and overall regimen has. And it's amazing what is going to happen to the way in which we focus and the way in which we sleep and the way in which we're going to be able to show up the next day and the impact that it's going to have on us. So Carissa, yes, I'm definitely going to be writing more articles, definitely going to be getting more stuff out there. Please go to see that masterinSixminutes.com link that I put in here, masterinSixminutes.com. It's going to give you a full list of videos and PDFs on how to implement some of this stuff, and then also give you access to myself and David. But I'll be writing a lot more of this stuff for
RFS
and the website, so you guys will be able to dive into this and reach out and connect on a multitude of levels and platforms, so that you can really take advantage of all of this stuff as well. And if you go up to the link above, that join.whoop.com/ownit, if you guys are looking for something to track your slow wave and REM sleep, I cover all your hardware costs as well as your first month. So the first month will be on me. If you guys want to go up there and click on that to just, again, give you some type of access to this as well. So I'll put them down here. Again, it's masterinSixminutes.com and then join.whoop.com/ownit. And then, as David said, just ownit.co is my website, so you can contact me and reach out to me there. But very active on social media on all platforms, and always happy to connect with people looking for help.